Today on the Redshirt, we discuss Michigan's defensive dominance against Washington in the college football playoff, as well as Ohio State reloading for a shot to win the first ever 12-team playoff. Buckeye fans, Big Ten fans, college football fans, or just sports fans in general, welcome into the Redshirt, where of course today I don't even have a red shirt on, but this is episode 2, hosted, produced, presented by me, Camden Mowry. Welcome in, and if you enjoy content like this, make sure you like, subscribe, share with a friend, because college football is my favorite sport, and I'm sure it's most of your favorite sports too. Therefore, let's get more people in on it to show people what's up with it. So let's start out with what happened, I believe, 2 weeks ago, probably 13 days ago from where I'm recording this. Michigan wins a national championship, and as you all know, I'm an Ohio State fan. Even though I'm wearing my UCF shirt, go Knights, big basketball wins recently. But I'm going to be the most level-headed Buckeye fan that you ever hear of on the internet because I swear some of them are outrageous. Michigan won, Michigan dominated, and it wasn't because of Connor Stallions. Now let's get into the national championship where Michigan had a 15-0 season. I believe it was only the fourth 15-0 season. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Where they had a dominating defensive game plan against Washington. Corum and Edwards had 100 yards each rushing, which I know that's offensive, but that offense kept Michael Penix off the field and it allowed for Michigan to be able to move the chains and keep the game in control. Now, Penix, probably the worst game he played outside of that Arizona State game, and in this game, he was 27 for 51, barely 250 yards, and he had 1 touchdown with 2 picks. Now, Mikey Sainristil and Will Johnson, 2 of the great corners from Michigan, each had a pick, and those corners were great against Ohio State. They were great against pretty much everyone they played all season. It seemed like when Michigan needed a big play defensively, they made it. And that was because of the defensive line just getting pressure on Penix, forcing him to make throws earlier or off platform that he didn't want to make. Now here's the big story from the game, is that J.J. McCarthy had no touchdowns the whole game. And I know, people think he's going to be drafted in the first round. If he is, good for him, all right? I'm not here to hate on Michigan players, but I don't personally see it. I know he's 2-0 against Ohio State. All he's done is win at Michigan. But if I'm looking for a first-round quarterback that's just a game manager, I wouldn't reach in the first round for a guy like that, if that makes sense. Now moving over to Washington's elite offensive wide receivers that they had being Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk. Those guys only combined for 15 catches, about 150 yards, and a touchdown, which is way under the expectation of what you'd expect. So each guy averaged about 5 catches for 50 yards. Odunze, I think, had the best game out of any of those 3 guys, but still, it was not a great performance by any means by those wide receivers, and mostly because of those corners that were locking them down. Now, some of the notes from the year is that Coach Harbaugh only coached 9 out of the 15 games, which if you do some math, that's 60% of the games on the season. So yes, in those 9 games, they didn't play anyone throughout that kind of meat of the schedule in those 6 games. I don't think they had any single ranked team on that list. But then, of course, once they got past Ohio State, he was back for the Iowa game, he was back for the Alabama game, and he was back for the Washington game. So, Sharon Moore, got to give a shout out to this guy who defeated 2 top 10 teams in the final 3 games. And the way this happened, that the story was explained by people online, is that Harbaugh found out that he was suspended for the Penn State game on the plane ride there, and Sharon Moore just had to take over and win the next 3 games, and that's absolutely what he did. Now, I get it. No Harbaugh. J.J. McCarthy didn't play too well in those 3 games, but they beat Penn State, they beat Ohio State, and they beat, I believe it was Maryland, and all 3 games were rather close, but still, 3 wins by a guy that hadn't coached at all before this year at this level is very impressive. Now, after Harbaugh was suspended for the second time, this was after Connor Stallions was fired, so this was no impact by Stallions. They were 6-0 with 5 wins over college football playoff top 20 teams. Buckeye fans, we need to realize that we can point to this being cheating, and if that's how you want to cope, that's fine. But realistically, teams have done this sort of advanced scouting before, and probably worse levels of cheating, and have gotten away with it, and we just don't know about it. So, while you can say that cheating might have an effect on the game, there's no shot that it was 100% of the reason why Michigan was able to defeat these teams that they were. I will die on the hill that I didn't like that Michigan beat Ohio State like many of you, but we lost that game fair and square being Ohio State fans. I mean, I didn't play the game, but our team lost the game fair and square. And maybe if we had another chance, maybe if McCord doesn't throw that pick at the beginning, maybe if McCord doesn't get pressured at the end and doesn't throw the pick later. Or how about this? Maybe if our elite defense was able to get off the field once in the second half. All those things wasn't because of cheating. All right, Michigan running the ball down our throats like they have the last 3 years was not because of cheating, all right? They exploited the weakness, which has been physicality and toughness, which is exactly what Harbaugh has preached to the team ever since that COVID year. Now, last note about Michigan so we can get into some Ohio State talk is that Harbaugh, there's been rumors of him going to the NFL, which is going to affect what we're going to see later on in this podcast. The Chargers have been talked about. There's been some other AFC teams, maybe Tennessee, now that job is opening, I believe. So Harbaugh to the NFL, where's he going to go? Who knows? This will affect Michigan. It'll finally let Ohio State fans breathe. But if Harbaugh were to head to the NFL, I would think that he would promote Sharon Moore because that's who he promoted in time of crisis, and the guy went undefeated and looked very passionate about the Michigan fan base and the Michigan team. I would give this Sharon more, and I would love to see that battle between him and Ryan Day for the next couple of years. Let's get on to the next segment, which is going to be a lot of Ohio State talk, which is called Reloading That Clip, is what Ohio State's been calling it. I was talking to my dad a couple days ago. We're all Buckeye fans here in the household, and this is the best Ohio State team I think I've seen since I've started watching, which was in 2010, 2011, whenever that Braxton Miller year where they went 6-7 was. That was the first year I started watching Ohio State football. So about 13 years now. But this has been the best team top to bottom I've seen. It reminds me a lot of that 2014 National Championship team. Great running back being either TreVeyon Henderson or the new addition that we're going to talk about here. Not really a star wide receiver. I know they had Michael Thomas, but even Urban Meyer said to himself when Michael Thomas was kind of like that dude in pros, he was like, I did not expect that. I mean, those other wide receivers were Devin Smith, Evan Spencer. I think Corey Brown might have been there. And then at running back, they had Zeke. And at quarterback, it was JT Barrett and Cardale Jones, which is what our new addition, Will Howard, reminds me of. I guess not really the strong physical running of Cardale Jones, but just not really superstar names at those two or at that position of quarterback, but just having a great team top to bottom. That defense was loaded that year, and a lot of guys made the NFL. So Ohio State's bringing back a lot of talent. No surprise about it. Every day after they lost to Missouri seemed like it just went up because it was like recruiting started out like the first hour was like boom. Everyone was like harping on Ohio State. Ohio State's dead. And then like they get Jeremiah Smith, they get Aaron Nolan. Everyone's like, okay, let's calm down. They bring in the second best recruiting class. And then they lose to Missouri and everyone's like, oh, game's over. Henderson's going to go pro. Everyone's going pro. And then they bring everybody back, almost everybody, except for, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. By the way, special tribute to Marv. Thank you so much for what you did in your 2 years and a game played for this team of absolute being the number one wide receiver on the team. He's going to make a great pro, and I only got to watch him play once. I wish I got to watch him play more. So on offense, Ohio State's bringing back Emeka Egbuka, which I was surprised about, TreVeyon Henderson, and then some linemen that are coming back as well. As well as, some other guys like Devin Brown, but obviously he wasn't going to go pro. Defensively, Jack Sawyer, JTT, Burke, Hancock, Ransom, and a couple D linemen that I didn't name are coming back. I believe they got some linebackers coming back too. I'm going to guess Eichenberg's gone, Steel Chambers is gone, but we got some guys that we've seen before come back at linebacker. This is huge. We have all these guys that could have gone pro. I believe it was 13 or 14 guys that decided to come back, and that is absolutely huge for what was the nation's number 1, number 2, or number 3 defense, basically all to be coming back and then reloading some other guys at those positions, maybe changing some things out. I can't help but imagine that in this third year of Jim Knowles' scheme, that these guys are just going to get better because it's been a steady increase. Year 1, it was like, all right, this scheme works, but guys are still trying to figure out. And then year 2 is like, whoa, this is really good. And then year 3, it's like, okay, now it's our second year for most of these guys, or our third year in this scheme, and they're going to be elite and probably the best defense in the nation. So that's exciting. Now, transfer portal additions absolutely been a win for Ohio State. They are running the transfer portal and running recruitment right now with Will Howard, Seth McLaughlin, Quinshawn Junkins, and now Caleb Downs recently. It was just one after another. So after the Alabama game, Seth McLaughlin enters the portal, and it's like, hey, it could be a Buckeye. I'm like, I'll take that. They might move him to guard. That's fine. And then Will Howard coming to Ohio State. It's like, okay, we got a quarterback who is not worse than McCord, might be better than McCord, and even if he's the same as McCord, you can expect them to be able to go 11-1, 12-1 again at the very least. And then it gets to Quinshawn Junkins. And I remember seeing that name floated around, and I was like, wait a second, this guy is the best running back on his team, and he wants to come from the SEC to go play in the Big Ten at Ohio State. And then when that happened, I was like, whoa, we have the best two-headed monster at running back at Ohio State. And then I believe it was 2-3 days ago, Caleb Downs gets announced. And obviously that's one that had been looked at for a lot for the last week, was Caleb Downs is rumored to Ohio State or Georgia. And I just don't get it. Like, why would Caleb Downs, a guy that wanted to go and follow his cornerbacks coach to Georgia, that lived in Georgia, Ryan Day flies out there, and whatever it was he said brought him to Ohio State. Now, hey, maybe it's the money, maybe it's whatever. But I'm excited to have Caleb Downs as a Buckeye. Lastly, I don't think this counts as a transfer because he technically didn't play for Alabama yet. It was Julian Sayin, the number 1 quarterback out of this class, is now going to have a great competition with Aaron Nolan. So after they win the national championship this year, which is obviously going to happen, go Bucks, it'll be Aaron Nolan or Julian Sayin's team. And I cannot wait to see these guys just make each other better in practice. And with that being said, I want to get into the teams that I believe are going to be the top 12 next year. It's just something a little fun to do to go back. And I did top 12 specifically because it's the first year of the top 12 playoff. Now, if I was doing just a ranking of where I'd put teams right now, like based off of the end of this year, it would not be this way because I would have Michigan number 1. They just won the national championship. Like, I would give them their credit. But this is just me expecting Harbaugh to leave, me expecting a lot of their stars to leave and just take a step back. So I'm going to go number 1, Georgia. Kirby Smart, I believe they brought in the best recruiting class this year. Carson Beck's going to have another year where he's going to get to develop and probably still be just as good, if not better, than he was this year. If they were in the playoffs, probably could have won the national championship, but that one loss to Alabama will stay in Georgia Bulldogs fans. So Georgia number 1, and I'm only doing that because if I sit here and put Ohio State at number 1, then I look silly. So I'm going to put Ohio State at number 2, which again, I think they're number 10 right now as like the end of the year rankings. And that game against Missouri was not fun at all. Trust me, I know. I watched every snap of it and wanted to just shut it off, but didn't. So just very excited about this Ohio State team going into next year. Now, number 3 and number 4, I feel like are interchangeable, but I got Texas number 3 with Quinn Ewers coming back. Longhorns are going to be great. Got some receivers that are going to be great. And then they just got Isaiah Bond from Alabama. I expect Texas to be right back up in the mix to not only win the SEC in their first year, but compete for a first-round bye in the playoff. And number 4 was Oregon. They just got Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma and former UCF quarterback. That's where I just graduated from. And so I have mixed feelings about Dylan Gabriel, but I think he's going to fit well with that fast-paced Oregon offense because that's all he's done. At UCF, they were fast. He was throwing it to Gabe Davis, who's on the Buffalo Bills now. That offense ran plays like every 9 seconds, and obviously Oklahoma's known for how fast they run, and Oregon's known for how fast they run. Number 5, this one I might have a little too high depending on what happens if Harbaugh comes back, but I got Michigan there. I didn't want to disrespect the national champs too much by dropping them down below some of these other teams that are still having question marks as well. So I got Michigan number 5 with a lot of guys leaving. And number 6, I got Ole Miss. And obviously with Quinshon Judkins leaving, it kind of opens up the question of who's going to be that running back, and we'll see when that happens. But Jackson Dart will take another year. Lane Kiffin had a great portal, even though they lost Judkins. And I feel like Ole Miss is going to be the new Alabama. They're going to be the team that rivals for the SEC West every single year, depending on what happens, depending on injuries. I feel like Ole Miss can be one of the best teams in the country. And we saw that with their bowl win against my number 7 team, which is Penn State. And I feel like looking at this list, I have them too high. But I really like the first-round matchups that we had here with the teams that I put in specific order. So I might have changed specifics just so that I didn't have like SEC matchups in the first round because I don't think the playoff would do that. But Drew Aller, Julian Fleming, maybe they'll have some chemistry. 2 great running backs that'll be there still. Penn State's defense was one of the best in the country. I expect Drew Aller to be a lot better than what we saw from him this year. Number 8, I got Alabama because I feel like with Kalen DeBoer, I get it. They're losing a lot of talent. I feel like I have to defend Alabama. They're going to be fine, I believe. All right? They've been great. I know maybe we'll see post-Nick Saban. By fine, I mean, I feel like the worst they can go is 9-3. I don't see them just being absolutely terrible because Kalen DeBoer is a winner, and he can recruit. He's recruited up in Washington. Why would anyone want to go play up in Washington where the weather sucks all year? So, Kalen DeBoer coming down to Alabama, down in the South. We'll see how the SEC treats him. Probably won't be able to win the SEC year one with teams like Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas breathing down his neck. But I'm going to put Alabama firmly at number 8. And number 9, a team that could probably beat Alabama is Missouri. Now, they're losing a lot of what was good for them, but I really like what Eli Drinkwitz has done at Missouri, and I feel like Missouri's going to be fine, and they're just going to build off of this last year. They had a great bowl win that they had against Ohio State, even though I feel like Ohio State should have won that game. No, I don't blame the starters not playing. But Ole Miss at number 9, Missouri at number 9. Number 10, Washington. This is also another one. The end of this list is kind of just thrown together because, like, who really knows, you know? Washington, they got the coach from Arizona, Jed Fish, I believe his name is. And guy's done amazing at Arizona. That's why I expected Noah Fafita to enter the portal and transfer with them, but I don't believe he has done that yet. So Washington at 10, being in the Big Ten, I mean, they got a lot of teams that they're going to have to jump in the Big Ten if they want to make any noise, which means Washington probably won't be in the top 12. Number 11, I feel like I had to throw in a ACC team, and so I just put Florida State in there just because I believe as long as Clemson is not going to engage in transfer portal negotiations, then they're not going to be a top 12 team. It's either adapt or die in college football, and Dabo Swinney's just choosing to do the other one, the latter other than the former. Number 12, I actually didn't say anything about Florida State. Let me say something about Florida State that's nice. They got DJU from Oregon State, nice quarterback from Clemson, from Oregon State, played a lot in the league or played a lot in college football. should be fine. Florida State's going to have a lot of talent. They'll be okay. And as long as Mike Norvell's there, they should win some games, especially in the ACC, which is looking like it's not going to be very strong next year. And last but not least, at number 12, I got Utah. I really like what Utah is going to do here in the Big 12. I had to put a Big 12 team in there. With Texas and Oklahoma leaving, I feel like Utah can win the Big 12, especially with Kyle Whittingham, a great coach. I love what this guy can do in the Big 12. I don't know if Cam Rising is coming back or not. That might be confirmed. Didn't write it down. Let me know if I'm wrong about that, but I think Cam Rising will still be there. So that is my top 12. I'm just going to stick. I really like my top 4 being Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Oregon right now because it's 2 SEC, 2 Big 10. And I feel like that is what's coming in college football, which is SEC dominance, Big 10 dominance with how great that these conferences are going to be. Make sure you do this justice. Make sure you show it to a friend. Get other people in on college football. Let's do this together. This offseason is going to be so much fun. I'm going to keep you up to date on recruiting. We might even dive into some other sports as we've got the championship games for each conference of the NFL coming up. Because, hey, I dabble in other sports as well, not just college sports. College basketball is just getting hot as soon as March comes around here in about a month. So let's get into it. Let's go on this ride together. And don't forget to subscribe to the Redshirt. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day.